Hi, Jeremy. How's your week going?
Is going it's busy, but it's good. It's just lots of stuff in personal life and in business all kind of happening at the same time, but everything's finding its slot, so that's okay. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. I am here in beautiful Kamloops as well, and I have noticed that the mornings are starting to seem really crisp.
Yeah, right. Actually, I was just looking at pants because I was holding on with the shorts, but now we're getting to the point where it's like it's time for pants.
Marks.
Exactly.
Well, I appreciate you joining in today. I like recording these. This is really good. I feel like today's topic, we could kind of go into two different areas of research. Maybe first starting off with where we look for information when we want to research properties, and then also a little bit into the education that new agents should or could look for when they're just thinking about getting licensed, on their way to becoming licensed, just kind of what's involved there.
Sure. Absolutely. That'd be awesome actually.
Yeah. So when looking up a property that you're interested in, and whether you're an agent or a general public, I know that anyone can go log into BC Assessment and then learn a little bit about properties. And there's actually lots on there, and any single person can log into that website and look. But
Right.
beyond that, or even from BC Assessment, is there maybe something more that you've learned that you didn't originally know was also available on that site? Or where else do you look when you're researching property?
So I stick with our board tools. And I think every board has different tools, but just some things that you should be aware of, especially if you use exposure. I know a lot of different boards are using that. I really like to start my search on BC Assessment. It starts it off, but we also have something called AutoProp. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're not using that, it's really a good tool to have because it's going to break down the property for you based on its zoning. It'll give you the tax information. It gives you absolutely everything, but then it also tells you about the school catchments that it's in. So it's a good all in one. And then I usually like to look past history of listings and see if there's anything on file from the past listing. BC Assessment can be off a little bit. Sometimes they don't know about a finished basement. So you can kind of narrow it down by going and finding the old listing just to get an idea of what has been done in the past, how long ago it sold. And then one thing that I'm using more and more is the home price index. And what I like about it is when you can find a property that sold 3, 4, 5 years ago and you put it into the HPI, what it'll do is it'll ask you the type of property, the area of the property, and what it sold for. It batches a bunch of sales that happened around that area and then batches them to similar sales that happen now, and it'll give you a price estimate. And that price estimate, in my experience, if it hasn't been updated, big changes to the property, if it's exactly as it was at the time of sale, it's usually within about 5%, which is pretty good, 5 to 7% of what a current resale would be. And so what I find is if I'm using that to get an idea of base, obviously that's not gospel, but it'll tell you a little bit about where the range should sit, whether the market's gone up or down. If there was comparable sales that happened 6 months earlier and the market's a little different, it'll give you an idea of what that would sell for now. So that's a really cool tool that I would definitely suggest for the newer agents that are out there. Start using that because a lot of people don't even know that it's there and it's not part of their workflow.
Right. And so the home price index. Now, I can look up links and things and put them into show notes. So if you're sitting down in front of your computer, you're an agent, you've never looked up home price index. What's the first thing you look up?
For me, it's the price estimate. That's the
Right. Or
simple.
sorry, price estimate.
Yeah, that's the simplest one because it'll batch when the last sale was and what it would sell for now. It's a great thing to take a look at. Other things that I actually find interesting is if you can go time over. If you're playing on the HPI, it'll have a percentage difference or an actual amount difference. I like the percentage difference because it's just easy for my head to calculate. And what it'll do is it'll go time over a period. So you can go over 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, and that'll tell you the trends. So if you're listing an apartment and you put in an apartment into the HPI, it'll say it peaked in 2023 and it's been declining lately. It'll tell you a little bit more about the market you're going into to tell what kind of pricing strategies to use. If sales are going down and the price is actually dropping, then you're probably going to have to get a little more aggressive. It's starting to incline. Maybe you can be a little similar to how it was the last couple of months. So understanding those trends, I think, would be part two. But the price estimate is a great way to just start using it, and it's easy. And you just need to know the date it sold, where it sold, the type of property it was, and it'll give you an estimate.
Okay. And then I'm also wondering about like how important you're finding it to look up permits for things and like the history of renovations as they've happened over time? Like, is that something that becomes very important for some of these heritage homes, or is that something like, do you have to go to the municipal office very often?
I don't. No, you should. I think you should. I should start with that caveat. I'm looking at it more from a value resale. The heritage property is a completely different beast. So if you're getting into listing heritage properties that have the heritage status, then yeah, you're going to want to look into what can be changed, what can't be changed, the rules around it. But for your everyday homes, like in our area, we do kind of your standard pull of title search, title charges, what's called a building information request in our city that says, is there any outstanding liens or permits on the property? We're filling out the property disclosure statement. We're doing that portion of the due diligence. It'll get a little deeper later on when the buyer's doing their due diligence, but it doesn't come up enough that I go down to the city hall every single property I list and look and see is every permit that's been done and has it been closed off. If it hasn't been closed off, it shows up on the building information request. It just hasn't been relevant to my workflow.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And I think it is different for different areas for sure. And when you have new developments in my spare time, I've been driving around some of the neighborhoods of Kamloops and kind of getting a sense of what different neighborhoods feel like. And when a developer has come in, are you finding there are many or some properties that have restrictive covenants, or where you have to have a statutory building scheme where everything kind of is uniform and looks like the neighborhood? Is that something that comes up?
On the newer builds, I mean, you'll get a 4-page title on a lot of the newer builds now. Everything is specified, building schemes, how what the use of the property is. Where I find it to be the most relevant is when you're getting into some of the older properties. You actually run into this a lot where you'll see people, they'll take a listing and they'll do the initial measurements and everything, and it looks like it could be subdivided. But then you find out that there's this old restrictive covenant. We had a lot of peach orchards and stuff like that. So there would be these easements that were put on in like the 60s or 70s, which will not allow you to subdivide with that easement on.
Hmm.
And the property might not even have one of those irrigation lines on it, but you can't subdivide, and then it becomes a bit of an issue. So understanding those is actually probably the most important part. I haven't come across too many new developments that have restrictive covenants on them that would actually stop a buyer from buying the property. You still have to understand them, but those older covenants can be a little sneaky. And I think those are the ones that really need to be looked at closely. And for a lot of them, you can't even pull them off of the LTSA. You have to actually go in and physically pick it up. So when I see those back to like the workflow, that's where I'm actually going into City Hall and getting the original to see what does this actually say.
Right. Yeah. But in Victoria, I remember Her Majesty the Queen is still on a lot of easements and things for title when we were pulling them. And it is related, but also from UBCM from last week, one of the things that the premier was talking about was these buildings that are coming in, and the plan from the province right now was to have them be almost like a kit for a
Oh,
house. And so
yeah.
things show up and then they just need to be assembled on the property.
Oh, I've heard of those. Yeah.
And
That's
that's one of,
like it's going to change things quick when you can buy a land and have a house on it in 3 months or 2 months, or if the permit system allowed it to go that fast. It's getting to a place where I think we're going to have housing that can be built pretty fast. I don't know enough about the construction side, but I've heard about those and just kind of following a little bit on some podcasts and YouTube videos as they come up, but it is interesting.
yeah, well, the gentleman of my life is a contractor. And I've personally been through the build process, and to take a lot of the waiting out of it would be a really
Yeah,
big deal. Yeah, within
totally.
3 months would be such a big thing. But then I also was wondering, and one of the things I think that we're going to have to watch play out as it all comes is CSA different? Do some of them need MHR numbers? Like what kind of a structure is it actually going to be? Those were the questions that didn't really get answered from the
Yeah, it's
speech
almost
that
like
was
its own
being given.
class of homes in between. And it's like they've got modulars and manufactured homes. They've got really specific designations about them, and they're actually different. By the way, anyone that's looking at a modular home and a manufactured home are different designations with different rules. They're similar, but they are different. And then these kit homes, I would think, would probably be more like a modular because they're fabricated off site and put on site. But I could see how they would start to classify them as their own type of property, especially if they're sitting on a foundation and everything like a normal house would. So it's
Mhm.
interesting.
It will be. And we didn't get to see any pictures of prototypes or anything, but that was my piece that I promised to give a little bit of an update of how the meeting of mayors and councils went with the province last week. And that was kind of one of my bigger takeaways. I know that we can delve like into any of these topics really hugely, but I also wanted to get to brand new agents. When you're a brand new realtor or you're thinking about becoming one, education, what do you need? Where do you go? What should you have? Like if you've never had a license before, what do you think are the first steps someone should look up or go and sign up for?
This might be a controversial take because I know with the way things are, we're supposed to be. You should understand the legals. You should understand how to write contracts. You should understand. The fact of the matter is, your first thing you should be learning is the process to helping a buyer, helping a seller, understanding the steps that go into that, and then getting out and having conversations with people. I've seen this with many of the newer agents that I train, and they get so caught on trying to know everything and that's why you have managing brokers. That's why you have other peers that can help you. The first time that I ever wrote an offer, I literally had to go to the realtor that was in the office next to me and be like, "Hey, I'm writing an offer. Can you just run me through it?" And some of the tips he gave me was great, and I can share it here. Like number one, if you're going to write an offer, buy yourself some time. So he was saying if you're out showing a house and that person wants to write an offer, sometimes what newer agents will make a mistake of is be like, okay, let's go to my office and we'll draft the offer. But there's a lot of pressure the first couple of times you do that. So he's like, I like to tell people, go grab a coffee, give me an hour and a half. I'll draft it up. I'll give you a call and then we can meet up and go through it. That made a big difference to me because then when I did actually write an offer, I bought that time. I was back at my office and I'm talking to my managing broker and asking what has to go in. So what I'm saying is there's time to figure that stuff out. But when someone says, hey, we're interested in buying a house, you should know how to take them through a house, how to show the property, how to open the door. You should understand like what's good etiquette when it comes to showing a house. Do you leave a card behind? What does it actually look like to walk some like the actual process itself, I think can get a little bit overlooked sometimes because we focus so much on the legal side and the fin track and all that. And I think the skill based side is what I would dive into really early as a newer agent because it's going to get you way further ahead, way faster. And one thing I know for sure is that you're pretty hungry to get your first deal done when you're a newer agent. And so I think that anything that can get you in line doing that is what your focus should be on and then figure out the rest as you go.
When I was first getting licensed, you get your course and the learning actually comes from UBC, the Sauder School of Business, and that's how you obtain your license. And that's like the one core piece that you have to have. And then beyond that, realtors also do PDP, like the development classes to retain your license and that. But then beyond that, this also sounds like when I started to explore a little bit more into coaching training, a little moving away from the formal institutions and a little bit more into finding someone who operates in a way that you like or has a system in place that you could learn to get those additional kinds of skills.
Yeah, yeah, it does. And I don't think it has to even be anything that formal when you're first starting out. Just finding some people that are experienced in the office. One thing I know from my experience, and a lot of people will tell you, is that a lot of these busy agents, some of them want to keep a lot to themselves, but some of them are pretty open, especially if you're just honestly trying to find some information. So when I first started out, I didn't find it too hard to be able to talk to my peers, ask some questions. I was just kind of a sponge to learn. That might be one of the first things I would look at when I'm choosing my office is not so much what's the lowest fees, what's this, what's that, like what's going to put me around the people that I want to be around to build the business that I want to build because you don't realize it. But when you first come in, you are such a sponge and getting yourself around people with good habits and good business fundamentals and good perspectives on the business is going to make a huge difference. My first move in offices, I noticed a big difference. You look at people in the X Games or anything, they all say you have to be around people that are all constantly pushing your game. And I think that's what I would look for. I'd want to be a small fish in a big pond as long as the vibe was there and I felt like I could learn a lot.
The people that you surround yourself with does say a lot about you, is something that seems to have come up a lot for me throughout my life in general, personally and professionally.
Yeah, environment's a big, big factor, I think.
Environment is a big factor. And I liked when you were saying that it is a lot of pressure to be doing paperwork with someone sitting right in front of you, because my first instinct when I was a brand new agent was, I don't want them out of my sight. I want them to know that I'm working. I want them to be right in front of me. I want them to be able to answer questions right when I'm there. But it was a lot of stress to have them right in front of me while I had to perform the task of learning my way through. It did take the great advice of someone in my office, and I used to keep coffee cards in my desk so that I could say, here, if you take these, go across the street, give me an hour or so. And then it also gives them a little bit of breathing room too, because it can feel like a pressure experience for someone, especially if they're not a seasoned buyer and they aren't very familiar with the process. Then if there's one or more of them, if there's one person, they can go away and call their partner, their family, their friend who has good advice for them and really reflect when they return to. It was like, here's what I've drafted up, what we've talked about. How are we feeling about some of these points?
Yeah.
And that was a
Yeah,
helpful thing
that's
too.
really good. Absolutely. I made this mistake earlier on too, which is assuming that everybody made decisions the way that I made decisions. And I actually found that a lot of people don't. A lot of people don't think about things or do things the way that I do. So I got better and better as time went on, finding ways to communicate with people. I call them off the hook questions. I use them more and more, but it just gives people a choice. And you probably know this having kids. It's giving the choice between two things actually makes it easier for us to make a decision. For instance, one of the things that worked really well for me, I'd be like, okay, so we looked at all three. We can't buy all three. Have you got an idea of which one was the best one today? I did actually have a rating system. We want to know which one's the best of the three that we looked at. I started closing a lot more deals because some people are like, you know what, we just want to do it. So I would say if it works for you, use something like that, but find out how they like to make decisions so that you're not constantly going away saying, okay, well, you guys go think about it and let me know, because that can get frustrating as a buyer. It's almost like they think part of the process is they have to take the time to think, and a lot of times they don't. If they want to make an offer, make an offer. It's a great idea. On the other side, you'll find that people that like to take their time, if you're constantly being like, oh, let's go write this up, let's go see how this looks on paper, you can deject a lot of buyers too. So it's finding that balance. And I think that's part of what our profession is finding a way to make people feel comfortable with their own decisions, but have them make a decision.
Yeah. One of the things that we don't really realize until we've reflected back on doing it so many times is that you are helping people through a really big life change. And there is a lot more than just house, which one's right. There is a lot more behind the process. It took me a long time to realize that often, especially in one market that I was working in, the decision maker wasn't even in the room. In a situation where parents are providing the down payment, they also had the final stamp on which one would be the ultimate house to purchase in the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I've learned that a few times. That's always a little bit rough when you find out a parent's making the decision. You spent a ton of time showing the kids places, and then they go, okay, well, I'd like to do another look and have my dad come through or my mom, and they haven't bought in 25 years. So that's really good advice, actually. It took me a while to figure that out, of having that in the pre-consult of, is there any other decision makers? Like if you guys did find a property tomorrow, is there anything that would stop you from just writing an offer? Assuming that we go out and we find the perfect property with the perfect price, perfect terms, everything's perfect. Is there anything that would stop you from writing an offer tomorrow? And they'll tell you, well, yeah, I need my dad to come see it. I need my mom to come see it. I don't have my financing completely done yet. I took Buffini's training very early on, and it stuck with me for a long time after, where he said it's not about telling people whether it's time to buy or not buy. It's just about moving people off the fence. Either they're a buyer right now or they're not. The worst thing you can do is leave people sitting on the fence. And that's kind of been my motto in a lot of this, of how do I communicate to make them make a decision and be okay with whatever it is. If it's not the right time, that's fine. If it is the right time, that's fine. But keeping someone on the fence can be just super frustrating for them. I've seen lots of buyers that have gone and found other realtors, left the realtor they were working with. The realtor was great, showed them houses, was super punctual. Everything was good, but they just couldn't help them get off the fence. And then they just get frustrated.
Right.
That's really, I would say, my advice to a new agent. Just help people make decisions, get them off the fence one way or the other, and then just move on to the next one. Don't get too attached, because it's not the right time for everybody to buy right now.
Yeah. Get them off the fence. And how do you stop spinning the wheels? But get them off the fence is the advice to, I think that solves that. And
Absolutely.
as much as there is, formal training and it's needed and necessary and important and for compliance and all of that, I think even just in this, chatting just a bit about it today, it really is all about what is it, 10,000 hours of experience or something before you can start to say that maybe you're kind of good at something. It is get out there and try it out and be the person that can say, I don't know the answer to that, but let me get back to you.
Yeah. The only caveat I would put on that is the 10,000 hours is when you recognize what the skill set is.
Oh,
And I think what can happen is you just get in a flow of 1 year's experience 10, 20 times. So the game is communication. That's the game. Like the better you are at your communication, the better results you're going to have. Being a good communicator, being a good presenter, being able to open people up just as well as you can close. In my opinion, especially in this business, the ones that are super successful are great openers. You don't need to be a great closer when you're a great opener. So as soon as you can open up someone's ideas to possibilities, the better you can communicate. A great example was advice that I got early on from when I was buying a house. I had a really good real estate agent the first house that I bought, and what they did was they opened me up to the idea that you don't need to buy your forever home right now. You need to get in the market. Your dream home, that's year 3. That's year 5. That's not right now, because I had unrealistic expectations of where it was. But the way that he was able to communicate it made a lot of sense. And then it gave me a purpose. And even though I wasn't buying my forever home, I bought a mobile home as the first one that we ever bought. It doubled in value and it absolutely set me up for the next purchase. And it was the greatest advice, but he opened me up to a different possibility as opposed to just showing me a bunch of stuff that was not going to work for me. That wasn't going to, I would have got frustrated because we had just been looking forever. And so from that perspective of having it done for me, I look at how can I be that for the next person and just open them up to the possibility ideas, really listen, really be able to like take what they're looking for and communicate in a way that allows them to make a decision, then just get them off the fence. Be a very good communicator. Focus on that. Focus on crafting your words. Focus on how you say it, what you say it. How are they reacting? How are they responding? Can I go on some presentations with some other realtors? And I don't think the realtor that I was watching could tell me what it was that they were doing, but I was looking to see, okay, how are they reacting? How is he transitioning to price? How's he explaining price? What's his mannerisms? Is his mannerism authoritative and he's telling them? Is it more inquisitive and he's just interested and he's just opening up to some possibilities of why this might be comparable, might not? The truth is it's the latter. He was very curious and very inquisitive and throwing it out as a possibility. This could be perceived as a good, and then he's getting their participation and now they're talking and they're explaining to him why maybe it's not, but it's a conversation. It's not an authoritative, this is what it is, and they make their stance and we have to negotiate to the price. So picking up those subtleties will make a massive difference. And then understanding positioning. And I almost left the business in 2012 because I didn't understand this. It's one thing to open up people, it's one thing to list their home, but if you don't understand how to position it to actually sell, it doesn't matter. You could have the best marketing, the best photos, everything. Overpriced homes don't sell. Homes that aren't positioned well don't sell.
Honestly, it all comes back to communication skills for sure. Thank you so much for today. I think that about wraps it. I was going to have end with advice, but I feel like you just gave us all advice. That was a very good one.
Awesome. Right on. Well, it was good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone. And we'll see you next week.
Absolutely.